Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Oddly Specific, the only podcast that covers everything from private equity to Pete Davidson. We are so excited for this episode. I have friend of the pod, friend in real life, Meredith Constant joining me again, and we are welcoming Nell Scovell. Nell is a writer and director of shows including Simpsons, NCIS, Murphy Brown, Newhart, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which she created. She's also a journalist, a speechwriter, and an author of a fantastic memoir, Just the Funny Parts, and a few hard truths about sneaking into the Hollywood Boys Club, which the Chicago Tribune reviewed as a masterclass in what it means to get knocked down but get up again. Let's give a Chumbawamba welcome to Nell Scovell. Nell,
Nell
welcome to Oddly
Scovell.
Specific.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. You did a show about Sabrina that came across my radar, and it was delightful to listen to. And I'd forgotten a lot of the jokes that you guys were quoting. So thank you for having me.
Well, I think that is a good place to start because we sort of stalk Nell.
Yes. I'm not going to say yes on air, allegedly.
But did I sort of stalk you?
I don't know. I'm pulling out articles from 1981 and being like, hey, Nell, do you remember when you were covering the Harvard soccer team? So Meredith and I did this episode of the pilot of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And I don't even know how that came to be. We just decided, we were like, it was a great show, Sabrina. Let's deep dive the pilot. And while we were having our deep dive, having our discussion, ruminating on these jokes that I'm here to tell you, they stand the test of time, y'all.
I can't stop thinking about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle one. There's a lecture at MIT. I don't know if it's at 8 or it's either at 8 or 10 o'clock. I screamed the level of jokes we were going. The pineapple, there's so many levels to the chopping of the pineapple. You want rings? Oh.
Although, my favorite were the really stupid ones, like the high school's football team was known as the Fighting Scallions as opposed to Stallions because there'd been a typo and they just went with it. So I love absurd humor.
And so we're watching this episode and we're talking about it. And then we had this revelation. We were like, I think it was Meredith C. who said, is Sabrina feminist coded? So Nell, as the writer, creator of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, we brought you on the pod to ask, is Sabrina feminist coded?
Sabrina was created by a woman and I was the showrunner. And as a feminist, I guess I would say yes, because it was an expression of my creative vision. I went on to co-write Lean In with Sheryl Sandberg. So I'm pretty out there as a feminist. But at the time, I was really I wanted to make a show that I would have liked when I was growing up. And, I loved Bewitched, which was feminist in its own way. And, Sabrina she wasn't boy crazy. She wasn't shopping crazy. The Wizards of Waverly Place, this is not a knock on that show. It's a wonderful show. I think they're revamping it too.
Yes.
But in the pilot episode, the big motivation is there's a sale at the mall that she wants to get to, and her powers are stopping her. And it's like, that was never Sabrina's motivation, because it was never my motivation when I was in high school.
One of my favorite parts, connecting Sabrina to the book, is how you talk about this moment that you fight for, which is the fact that the aunts aren't going to be upset that Sabrina is living with them, because how horrible would that be if nobody wants Sabrina? And that's not it. And I think there is something about seeing just two loving aunts that are different and funny and love Sabrina, and it's just a loving environment, and that's not where conflict has to live. That was wonderful. And it kind of made me think, what other things did you have to kind of shoot down as ideas for the show or directions they wanted to take Sabrina?
Yes, so they also wanted her mother to be dead in the great Disney tradition of
Bambi destroyed me.
And I thought that, and I said, well, if she isn't dead, where is she? And I was like, she's an archaeologist and she's at work. And they were like, come on now, what mom would leave her child? And I was like, well, if you let me direct a movie, I'll go leave my kids with my husband for a couple of months, which I did. So the right job, right timing. But that was why it was important to leave her with someone loving, because you are a bad mom if you go off to do your job and you leave your child with someone terrible.
That is
But
so,
she
yes,
doesn't.
you're a really bad mom if you do
Yes.
that. I also love that it was like, well, she's going to be a witch and that like basically kills her mom. So she's got to go dig so that she doesn't off her mom,
Yeah.
which that seemed fair.
Yeah, no, and Robbie Benson played the wizard dad in the pilot. I think later in the series they recast him, but he was great. He played the Beast in Beauty and the Beast. He does the voice of the Beast. I love him. Did you make that connection?
Well,
The dad
now
in
it
the
makes
book?
sense. I was like, why am I attracted to this book man?
He
I
is
get it now.
very
more.
good looking.
He yells. I don't know if it was that episode, but he was in another episode and we made him do the Beast voice because you have to.
Okay. I have some watching to do this weekend.
That, I think, brings up a really interesting point, because do you think a show like Sabrina can be made now?
Sure. Oh, I was going to make one other point.
Yeah,
there's
please.
One of my favorite episodes is called Mars Attracts. I wrote it, and Chris Elliott, who I knew from my Letterman days, co-stars in it, and he and Caroline Ray are hilarious. Anyway, the family goes on a ski trip to Mars, which has very high mountains, and Sabrina, who's having some trouble with Harvey at the time, meets a cute ski instructor, and they go to have a picnic and watch the two suns rise, or whatever the joke is. And at one point, and I was rewatching this episode not too long ago when my book came out, so 2018, the ski instructor turns to Sabrina at one point and goes, "Would it be okay if I kiss you?"
Oh, consent.
And I was like, oh my God, yes, exactly. And of course, I do think when you say, was it a feminist show? Like, I don't think a man would have necessarily have thought that. In fact, I directed an episode of Awkward. Did you watch
I
that
loved
show?
Awkward. Yeah.
I loved Awkward too. And Molly Tarlov is just like, so brilliant. And Desi Lydic, who's now on The Daily Show. She was on Awkward too. Genius, a comedic genius. Anyway, the episode they gave me to direct involves the character going to look at colleges, and she meets a boy, and they're sitting, he gives her a beer, and they're on the couch, and he just says, "You're so beautiful." And then he leans in and kisses her. And I actually went to the showrunners, who were both men, and I said, the idea that if you just tell a girl she's pretty, then that makes it okay to kiss her. Like, maybe he should ask. And they pretty much laughed in my face.
You also brought that up with, I think I don't know if it was NCIS, but it was a character, you realize she's pregnant because the smells, which, oh man, the smell of cooking meat when I was pregnant is how I knew at the beginning, and how everyone said, well, why is that a tell? And you're like, I've been pregnant. I've done the pregnancy thing. This is the thing women relate to. So I was thinking of that
was
too.
On Warehouse 13. And
there we go.
I was getting notes, and I think there were 8 people on the call, and I'm the only one who had ever been pregnant.
Yeah, that took me back.
It reminds you of the fact that McKinsey, who, mixed thoughts on them, but they have real concrete data that shows more diverse teams produce better results. And I think that's one of the big things that I took away from your book. Okay. For the folks who I would even say a couple years ago, I didn't know what this was. Could you explain to us what a showrunner does?
They're the head writer. When I run a room, I try to make it very democratic. The best idea wins. It doesn't matter where the pitch comes from, but ultimately someone has to make a decision. One of my favorite descriptions of writing is that it's not an act of creation, it's an act of choice. So it's just making a million little decisions. And so the question on a sitcom is, who makes all those decisions? And ultimately it is the showrunner.
Okay. So it's basically the person who is in charge at the end of the day, right? Like the final decisions.
Well, it's really a creative position, as opposed to, there are a lot of executive producers who might be managers or part of, work for the studio, but the showrunner is the head creative vision person.
When you were working on Sabrina, the thing I took away, obviously, with the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is that there are layers of jokes that were meant for everyone. And it made me think, was the intention to write for families to watch together? And how is that move away to everyone's on their own streaming devices and things feel like very curated for people? How does that impact writing today versus writing Sabrina, when you're writing with the idea, I'm assuming, of, a family and mom's maybe in the kitchen and the TV's on and she can hear everything too. And, it's just different.
Yeah, I mean, then they talk about we've gone from broadcasting to narrowcasting. Sabrina aired originally on Friday nights on ABC, TGIF, and it was meant to be family friendly. But, I had sort of come from that Simpsons tradition too, not just, I don't know if you guys knew, but my little nod to Bart writing something new on the chalkboard was Sabrina always changing into a new outfit at the end of
that's my
credits.
favorite part. That was my favorite part, when she does that little outfit change.
It was a pain in the ass to shoot because it was an extra. It's better to just set your credits, run them. It was an added piece of work, but I thought it was worth it. Anyway, but the Simpsons was the best example of the show that worked for both kids and parents.
Yeah. Do you think, Meredith, that there are a lot of you have little ones running around at home?
Famously, yes.
Do you feel like there are a lot of what is a show like that now?
There's just really nice, except for the only thing I can think of that my kids and I were able to really watch together was when they redid The Babysitters Club on Netflix. And that was such a, books from my childhood. They've gotten to the graphic novels. So that felt like a really nice crossover. I told my middle child, I said, we have to watch Sabrina because I think you would really, really love this. And my eldest, who is not a child that's into the boys and into all this stuff, but the idea of magic and friends and a talking cat, sold. Yeah. So it just doesn't feel like shows are made. Some of the shows and the YouTube stuff, I'm not going to name names, but it's garbage. It's not fun to listen to in the background. I'm like, if I hear that song one more time from that popular movie right now, I'm going to lose my mind.
Here's my hot take. Okay, because have you seen the Subway takes? Have you seen Subway takes?
No.
Oh my God, we got to get you on Subway takes. Subway takes is this guy. He asks people. He holds like a NYC. What is it? The Metro in New York?
Subway.
I'm so Boston. I'm like, I want to call it the T, but I know.
I'm like, I pull out my Charlie cat.
Yeah. So he just hands someone a card and he's like, all right, what's your hot take? And people have 10 seconds to respond. Long story short, my hot take is, we need to bring back appointment television.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I think they're learning that, and they've started, Slow Horses, which is this incredible show. I think on Apple Plus, it's British and Gary Oldman stars. I think they dole them out one a week, and it works. It's nice.
I just miss that feeling on Sunday night of getting all your homework done and then being able to watch the show. That was the best feeling in the world. And I feel like I used to like to watch, I forget what it was. Maybe it was Malcolm in the Middle or something. There was something that was on
that was a good Sunday night. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I got all my homework done, I could watch it. And I don't know. I think we got to bring back that appointment TV, and it's on at that time. And if you don't get it, you just have to wait. It'll be on demand the next day, but whatever.
It would make it easier, because even Friday night, the TGIF lineup, I lived for that. I was not getting invited out very much. I was a little ahead of my time for my fellow elementary schoolers, but having that TGIF lineup, it was like, okay, I'm going to eat dinner. I'm going to park it in the basement. I've got the yodels, and we're going to go through and watch Sabrina. All the friends are going to be here for Friday night. Oh, I loved that.
Speaking of Malcolm in the Middle, Bryan Cranston did a Sabrina episode.
Yes.
He played a lawyer, and the joke was he was in a lawyer in a 4-piece suit. And so a 3-piece suit, was the jacket, the pants, and a vest. And so they asked him, what's the 4th piece? And he dropped his trousers, and he had boxers in the same material. He was such a good sport. He was so
that's
funny.
Lovely.
Oh, I love that. Well, that kind of brings us to your book, Just the Funny Parts, which both Meredith and I read. And I have to tell you, there are a lot of folks. Oh, there it is.
Right there.
There it is.
Just pretend. I read it on my Kindle. I bought it though. Go buy it.
You have the hardcover though.
Oh, I do. Yeah. They've sent me a bunch. I can't give them away.
Listen, you can give them away. Listen, you can send one my way.
Oh, do you want to do a giveaway? We could do a giveaway.
We'd love to do a giveaway.
Yeah,
even better.
Sure.
Oh my God, that'd be great. We have a lot of folks who've been reading it though. A lot of folks who listen to the pod or who follow us on socials, and they have been reading this. And I would love for you to walk us through the process of writing this book? Because Meredith's in a book proposal mode. I am in my almost last semester of getting my MFA in creative writing. So I'm working on my memoir. And so I would love to hear, like, what was the genesis of Just the Funny Parts?
Lean In was this huge sensation. I think it was #1 on the New York Times list for, I mean, like 16 weeks. It's insane. And then stayed on the list itself for an entire year. And one day I got a call from a book agent named Lacey Lynch, who was still in her 20s. And she said she loved Lean In and she was curious about me. And so she Googled me and saw that I'd created Sabrina, the Teenage Witch. And I was like, who is this person? And why isn't she writing a memoir? So that's really how it happened. And it was a really positive experience for me. I mean, it's hard, and books are just a slog. And if you're in the middle of one and it's a slog, that's exactly what it's supposed to feel like. You just have to keep pushing the rock up the hill. I mean, the hardest thing for me, and one of the reasons I called it Just the Funny Parts, was, a lot of bad stuff did happen, and it was really hard, which is sort of where Lean In comes into play, because the whole point of Lean In was me and Cheryl trying to tell women, like, it's not you, it's the system. Right. And it's hard, and it shouldn't be that hard. As I started writing it, what I learned was I had so much more fun, like, writing about Joel Hodgson and his, the guy from Mystery Science Theater 3000, sure. And our collaborations together. And, Barry Kemp, who was my mentor at Coach, and just, Suzanne Daniels, who was this president at Fox and the WB.
Is that the one you got her couch? Did you get her couch?
Oh, no, that was someone else. Yeah,
sorry. I remember that couch.
That's a great story. No, and the people who really, like, just, you realize, oh, they were always there when I needed some support. You realize you just want to write about the people who were good to you. And in fact, I ended up having a t-shirt made that said, I'm writing a memoir and you're not in it. Because ultimately, those are the people who, like, I didn't want to give oxygen to.
Right. Oh, I like that. But what I really loved is this has stayed with me in the book, is at the end, and I'm not going to lie, I got in my feels. You saw the job timeline, and it was just everything you did, but also everything that didn't get greenlit, everything that you worked on, that it felt like, what, I guess I should ask you, why did you include that at the end? And why did that feel important to include in the book?
Yeah, I had to fight to include that. And by the way, I have since remembered a bunch of things I forgot to list. It's kind of the same reason I included the story of being sexually assaulted by a head writer. And it's that too often we see someone who's successful and think, like, nothing bad ever happened to them. That's why they've become successful. And that just isn't the case. And, I hit a lot of walls along the way. And I just wanted to make that clear to people.
Yeah, it felt like that. And it felt like that it was just part of the process. And also that there was purpose and something lovely and worthwhile about those projects that didn't happen, that led to something else. I don't know. As someone with a lot of failed projects, I was like, well, this is nice. Maybe I'll make a nice timeline one day.
I mean, I wrote a spec script 6 months ago because I had a fun idea for a sitcom. And to me, it's more fun to write it than to pitch it. I learn something every time I write a script. So that you're absolutely right. You get something out of it. And I don't know, are you Sondheim fans at all? Stephen Sondheim?
Yes.
Yeah. So my production company is actually called Finishing the Hat Productions.
Yeah. I love that.
And this is before he wrote the book, Finishing the Hat. This is just based on loving the song from Sunday in the Park with George. But there's a line in there that a vision's just a vision if it's only in your head. If no one gets to see it, it's as good as dead. It has to come to light. I can't control if people buy my things or not, or make them, but I can bring it to that place where I can be proud of it and love it.
That's beautiful. And I think so important for all of us to remember. I'm getting better with rejection. I really have to say, like, Okay, this is my new thing. Like, I didn't get something the other day and I was like, oh, I have to get a lot of no's before I can get a yes. So like now when I get no's, I'm like, I'm just one step closer to a yes.
So I can't remember if I put this in the book, but at one point I was feeling very frustrated. I was on a sitcom. The guy who hired me had created another show and kept getting pulled away. And the people he left in charge were pretty sexist. I was pretty miserable. And at one point I had to sit down and make a list of people who thought I was funny. So it was like, so it was, and it was a good list. It was like Jerry Shandling, David Letterman, Bob Newhart. Like one of the things I do think is we focus on, they've done the studies. There's a negative bias where we focus on the bad stuff. And I didn't do it intentionally, but it was actually a smart thing to just keep reminding myself, no, there are people out there who believe in you. And I always just got enough positive reinforcement to keep going.
Right.
Oh, it's so necessary. I was cited in one book as just a passing, this was helpful. And I have it on my wall, cut out from the book, just to remind myself that at one point in time, someone thought something I did was worthwhile.
Meredith, you do so many worthwhile things. And
thank you.
This
is like a therapy session.
So many things that I do without you. So thank you. And you know that. But anyway.
So I did want to ask about like going off of that, about, the only thing that you can control is putting it out there.
Yeah.
And you wrote in your book, the only way to move forward creatively is to allow yourself to be judged. And I wonder, how do you do that in the time of the internet? How do you safely put things out in a way that you drown out the noise? Or like, how should people be workshopping their art? Because let me tell you, TikTok is a dark, dark world.
Are you on TikTok now? Are you on there?
No, I mean, no, I'm not. I certainly, my nephew is, and he's very funny. And I like looking at his stuff and his friend's stuff. He went to Wesleyan and they're all hilarious.
Oh yeah. That's breeding grounds for funny people.
But I don't know. I mean, it's a whole different world. And when people ask me like, how did you get your start? I said, like, it doesn't matter. It's like asking, what was it like riding horses to work? It is. I don't know. How do you deal with it?
We go to therapy.
Go to therapy. You have other creators that go through it too.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only way you really survive. You're like, oh, someone's made fun of my face again while I'm talking about something serious. And you get better. I mean, I don't know. I think I always can tell if I'm having a day, if a comment really gets to me and it's like, this wouldn't get to you. And that's when I know that I need to actually like drop the phone and back away slowly and not engage. But
I mean, the thing is, a lot of times those comments that we get is like, we can see who they are. And it's, user 4637253 with no photo. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like, Brene Brown has that whole thing about like, well, I'm in the arena. So unless you're in the arena, I don't have to take your, like behind the display name criticism too seriously, right? I'm not hearing this from people who I respect, from my peers. And that I think is probably the biggest thing, is you get a lot of unsolicited feedback, and you're doing a lot of journalism work now.
Yeah, some. I always kept up. I started as a journalist, and I wrote for Vanity Fair for like 20 years. And it was always my backup if TV didn't work out. And it's so funny because as the business has gotten tougher, I have a lot of male peers who are just now starting to hustle. And it just makes me laugh because I've just been hustling my whole life.
When you moved into the fourth quarter of your book and you're suddenly writing jokes for the White House Correspondents' Dinner and Jon Favreau, I lost my mind. I said, okay, this is too much. This is, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I was, oh, what a dream.
It feels like a dream. In fact, how your phone will pop up memories, and they just popped up one from one of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I just stared at it like, did that really happen?
You definitely have the best memories on your phone. I want to spend a day with just the memories that pop up on your phone, because I feel like they're not as much fun as mine.
Mine's like 5,000 photos of my dog. But I will
What's weird is mine is like 5,000 photos of your dog. I have been stalking you.
Oh, she found the articles your dog wrote from college.
Well, getting into that, working on the White House Correspondents' Dinner. First of all, this is a two-part question. What does it feel like to have President Obama deliver one of your jokes? Because that's pretty incredible. And also, too, what do you think, as someone who's written for political folks, what does it mean to have a president who understands comedic timing?
Well, he definitely does. He's in the book I talk about, he has Johnny Carson's timing. If people know who Johnny Carson is, he was a late night host. And even the way I wrote a joke about the Obamas giving out Easter candy to little kids. And it was the time Michelle was doing a big push for nutrition. And the joke was that Barack would hand them candy and then Michelle would snatch it out of their hands. And he kind of repeated the word snatch. Like he just loved the sound of it because it is a funny word. So he was just fantastic. I wrote jokes for Hillary for the Al Smith dinner, and she was fantastic.
The Al Smith
all
dinner.
These people are great communicators. And for the most part, they know how to tell a joke. They spend their lives public speaking. I don't think it's that unusual for politicians to, but how great is Tim Walz? I mean, he's...
Oh my gosh.
America's dad, healing all of our trauma from our boomer dads who voted for Trump. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
So if you could write for any politician right now, who would it be?
Oh, well, yeah, Tim Walz. I mean, that'd be super fun to write both the corny dad jokes, but also like he went there to the couch.
Straight to the couch. Okay, so are conservatives not funny, or do they have bad joke writers? Are conservatives not funny, or are their joke writers bad? Because we also read your Daily Beast piece about Ann Coulter, your former AIM friend, and oh boy, I think I blocked out that she was an aspiring comedian, and I wish I could unlearn that.
I mean, she actually is not devoid. Like, she does appreciate humor, and I like that she wants to be funny. But I think one of the problems with conservatives is a lot of humor comes from telling the truth. It's funny because it's true, and you're doing some sort of twist. And I think lying is such a deep part of their ethos now that it's really funny. It's really hard for them to be funny. I mean, I disagree. People say like Trump has no sense of humor, and I think he's got a bully's sense of humor.
Yeah,
he'll put up those like videos where he hits a golf ball and then it hits Hillary Clinton and she falls. And I understand slapstick and why someone would think that was funny. Yeah, for the most part, I mean, like Jesse Watt, Greg Gutfeld. I don't know what his deal is.
Yeah. I mean, he's just loud.
Wait, didn't Fox try to do like a comedian at some point? Didn't they try to have a comedian slot on? I remember some man that they were trying to, was that Greg, or who was that? They were trying to do a comedy thing.
CNN's doing a new show with Roy Wood Jr. as the host. And I think Michael Ian Black and maybe even Amber Ruffin might be part of it too. Anyway, that seems good.
Oh, that
okay.
Sounds
We'll have to check
incredible.
that out. Here's the thing about Trump. Do you think now one of the problems with Trump is that when you are that high up, and we talk about this for my fellow stand-ups, we talk about this a lot. If you're that high up, you got to make fun of yourself. And all that Trump does is punch down, punch down, punch down. And it doesn't look good. And he can't make fun of himself.
That is a deep wound.
At the Al Smith dinner with Clinton, he had one joke that really landed. And the butt of the joke was Melania.
Still punching down.
The joke was about how the press is unfair. The first lady gave a great speech and they all liked it when Michelle gave it.
That's not bad. That's pretty good. And you wrote about if Melania Trump's speech was AI'd, and when you read it, like, who
100%.
Totally AI.
Oh my gosh, the adjectives, nothing was right.
I would love to, as we kind of wrap up our time here now, what kind of tips could you give folks for writing process? What works for you, or what do you recommend to folks?
I got my first professional writing job when I was 20. And I was a sports writer for the Boston Globe, which was a great job. And so now I, made my living as a writer for 40 years. And I am still shocked at how bad my first drafts are. That's for articles, for scripts, for notes to my husband. And it's all about iteration. And the iteration is not just combing through and making what's there better, but it's the digging deeper and the discovery of things you didn't see in the first place. And it's jettisoning half of what you started with for what's better. Trust in the process of discovery in your writing. And then the other thing is I've really learned is you can't do everything at the same time, because story structure, character voice, comedy, emotional moments, they're kind of all different muscles. And so I've really kind of gotten good at not trying to do it all at the same time. First, really focusing on my story structure, then doing my character voices, then doing the emotional pass, then doing the humor pass. You can get stuck on a page for 3 days if you're trying to do all 4 at once.
Sure.
This is really helpful for our Mr. Poole spinoff that we're working on. So I do really thank you for that advice. I was focusing too much on the comedy, not enough on the emotional.
Listen, we have big plans for Cadaver Shack.
Oh man, I have so many ideas.
All right, I'm asking you a very in the weeds question here, but just because this is such a thing that we talk about with stand up for my fellow stand-ups out there. When you're writing, do you free write? Do you type on the computer? Are you ever do you ever grab voice notes? What are we doing?
I still like writing with pen and paper. So first of all, I have a very sparkly pen.
Oh, we love it.
You can see
that.
that.
Oh, we can see it.
Beautiful.
And then I have a really cute notebook. I am very busy. And so I go out with my sparkly pen and my funny notebook, and I sit at my Starbucks and I just let my imagination roam.
Does it help you to get out of the space that you're in?
For me, yes. My husband calls me an itinerant worker, because I kind of go from coffee shop to thrift store for a break, then back to another coffee shop. I drink a lot of coffee and I eat a lot of carbs.
It sounds perfect. This sounds like a really good career path for me.
Day. Nell, where can friends of the pod and friends of Nell find you?
Not on TikTok.
Until November 5th, hiding in a closet in the fetal position.
Well, you're going to have a little bit of company there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you make room? I'll bring snacks.
So right now I am a columnist at the Daily Beast, and I write for them a couple of times a week, or I try to. I sold a pilot to CBS, so I'm off to script on that. I'm working on that and very hopeful. And maybe when I finished a novel during the pandemic, because if you've ever wanted to write a novel and there's a pandemic and you will never write a novel. That was my
I had a baby instead. I feel like I really screwed up.
No. That's if I could have, I would have done that.
That third one pushes you over the edge.
I didn't really do anything. I think I cleaned my baseboards.
What? That is huge.
Honestly, that was really big.
Never.
That is awesome, Nell. Well, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to link to a lot of these articles that we talked about. I know a lot of folks have been reading the book. I want to thank Nell for being with us. I want to thank my partner in co-host crime, Meredith Constant. And of course, all of you for listening. Don't forget to tell a friend about Nell Scovell.
Yes.